Hello, thank you for joining us on the news. I'm Ruth Aguilera. My sign language interpreter is John Bamidele. Let's begin with the headlines. ASU suspends its 2 weeks warning strike. House of Representatives expresses concern over alleged use of harmful chemicals as food preservatives. And United States pushes plan to disarm Hamas and rebuild Gaza. As part of activities celebrating its 80th anniversary, the United Nations, the Nigerian country team opened to the public an exhibition inviting Nigerians to see for themselves how the global institution is working closely with Nigeria to achieve sustainable development goals. Garba Natala reports.
Here at the exhibition hall of Arts and Culture Museum in Abuja, the atmosphere is one that echoes UN's intervention for the past 8 decades, from vaccinations against diseases, education of the girl child, and humanitarian assistance in some parts of the country.
It was formed so that there will be no Third World War. The fact that there has not been Third World War after 80 years is a big achievement. There are diseases that have been eradicated from parts of the world because the United Nations has worked with member states. We have improved infant mortality through vaccination of children. Children now live longer. In the past, children below 5 years would die because of the diseases that are preventable. So the United Nations has done a lot. However, there have also been challenges. You still hear of wars in various places of the world.
The exhibition is also a testament of the enduring partnership with Nigeria, being a signatory to the UN Charter since 1960. Students from different schools were inspired, saying they had no idea what the UN does until recently.
Like the WIPO, which is the World Intellectual Property Organization, their work is to fight for people, especially young children, who use their creativity to make good things, like write novels, sing songs, and other things.
The exhibition remains open for a week, tagging this year's theme as Building the Future Together for the commemoration, which serves as a reminder for more work to be done to address food security, economic diversification, and peaceful resolution of conflicts. In Abuja, Garba Muhammad Atala, NTA News.
Minister of Foreign Affairs Bianca Ojukwu has called on South African authorities to ensure a full investigation into the killings of some Nigerian nationals in South Africa. This was when the minister and her South African counterpart, Thandi Moraka, agreed on several agreements and also signed a memorandum of understanding on early warning mechanisms towards strengthening the frameworks of democracy and good governance of both nations. At a political consultation meeting hosted by Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bianca Ojukwu emphasized the safety of Nigerians.
Continuous reports of killings and abduction of Nigerians resident in some cities in South Africa. We are worried about the increasing cases of extrajudicial killing of Nigerians in South Africa and delays in the granting of bail by local courts for murder suspects, which usually vanish afterward without trace.
The successful hosting of Nigeria's South Africa's 11th Binational Commission in 2024 in Cape Town marks the beginning of a bilateral relationship which has been ongoing and evolving into a strategic alliance to reinforce democratic institutions of both nations. All right, in other news, United States pushes plan to disarm Hamas and rebuild Gaza, just as International Criminal Court rules on Israel's obligations towards agencies providing humanitarian assistance to Palestinians in Gaza. Let's hear from Uche Oguchukwu.
U.S. Vice President James Vance warned that the United States and allies face a tough task disarming Hamas and building a peaceful future for Gaza, as Washington sought to pressure Israel over the next step in its ambitious ceasefire deal. Vance met Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the second day of a trip to Israel, part of a diplomatic tour in support of the U.S. brokered plan to end the fighting, recover hostages, and eventually rebuild the devastated Palestinian territory.
Do this the right way, it could create a model I think that could lead to other peace agreements all over the world, because it shows what's possible when you're willing to think outside the box and actually put some elbow grease to get it done.
We've been able to do two things. Put the knife at Hamas's throat. That was the military effort by Israel. And the other effort was to isolate Hamas in the Arab and Muslim world, which I think the president did brilliantly with his team. So those two things produced the hostages. Nobody believed we'd get them out.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is due in Israel on Thursday and will meet Netanyahu on Friday. Vance had kicked off the three-day visit on Tuesday by opening the Civil Military Coordination Center in southwest Israel, where U.S. and allied troops will work with Israeli forces to monitor the truce and oversee aid to Gaza. In another development, the International Court of Justice, ICJ, said Israel was obliged to ease the passage of aid into Gaza.
As an occupying power, Israel is obliged to ensure the basic needs of the local population, including the supplies essential for their survival.
The wide-ranging ICJ ruling came as aid troops are scrambling to scale up much-needed humanitarian assistance into Gaza, taking advantage of a fragile ceasefire agreed earlier this month. The court also recalled the obligation under the international law not to use starvation as a method of warfare. Uche Ugochukwu, NTA News.
United Nations warns that global trade system is at risk of derailment, and paramilitary drones target Khartoum International Airport for a second consecutive day. Again, Uche Ugochukwu reports.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned that the rules-based system for international trade risks are coming off the rails.
Global debt has soared, poverty and hunger are still with us, and the international financial architecture is not providing an adequate safety net for the developing countries.
At the UN Conference on Trade and Development in Geneva, Guterres said too many countries were trapped in a debt crisis, spending more money on servicing creditors than funding health and education. Guterres said trade and development was facing a whirlwind of change, with 3/4 of global growth now coming from the developing world, services trade surging and new technologies boosting the global economy. However, geopolitical divisions, inequalities, conflicts, and the climate crisis are limiting progress. Elsewhere in Sudan, reports say army air defenses intercepted the drones launched by a terrorist militia which has been fighting the army since April 2023. Sudan's Civil Aviation Authority had said the airport will reopen on Wednesday, with domestic flights resuming gradually after technical and operational preparations were completed. However, no further announcements on the reopening were made after Tuesday's attacks, and it remains unclear whether operations will go ahead as planned following the latest strikes. Uche Ugochukwu, NTA News.
The Academic Staff Union of Universities has announced suspension of the 2 weeks warning strike declared on 13th October 2025. Addressing the media, ASU President Chris Piwuna said the decision followed the swift interventions by chairmen of Senate committees on tertiary education and TED Fund, Labour, and Deputy Senate President Barau Jibrin. Piwuna said NEC of the union resolved to suspend the strike to reciprocate the support of Nigerians. However, a 1-month window is given to government to conclude the ongoing renegotiation of the 2009 federal government ASU outstanding issues.
While noting that a lot more work is still required, NEC came to the conclusion that the objective of the warning strike had been partly achieved. NEC hopes that the government will take advantage of this opportunity to seamlessly resolve all the issues in order to guarantee industrial harmony and ensure stability of our academic calendar. Should government fail to resolve the issues within the 1 month window, ASU reserves the right to resume the strike without further notice at all.
The union appeals to patriotic Nigerians and key players in the education sector to prevail on government to speedily conclude the renegotiation of the 2009 agreement and other outstanding issues. In other news, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has approved the extension of the tenure of Surveyor General of the Federation, Agbuduganiu Adebomei, by 2 years. The extension, which takes effect from January 5, 2026, was necessitated by the recent transfer of the office of the Surveyor General of the Federation to the Presidency. The Surveyor General has already initiated reforms across critical sectors of geospatial data systems, which the President is keen to see completed. The President expects the Surveyor General to consolidate the reforms within the next 2 years, focusing on national land management and administration, highways and urban land infrastructure coordination, reclaiming and erosion control programs, and other related matters of strategic national importance. He was appointed the Surveyor General of the Federation, if you recall, by late President Muhammadu Buhari. That was January 5, 2022. The ongoing amendment to the Electoral Act is fundamental to restoring public trust, reduce post-election disputes, and empowerment of the election umpire to function without interference. The Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2022 today scheduled second reading at the Senate, as legislators across party divides express support to deployment of technology, setting clearer and stricter operational guidelines for political parties and imposing tougher penalties for election offences. The Senate is of the opinion that all elections must reflect the will of the people.
It comes to electoral matters because it is assumed that whatever INEC does is perfect. So this time around, the INEC must be held responsible because they are the ones that have the electoral materials and they are the ones that are in charge of logistics and all. So we must give them some responsibilities in court to prove that, yes, indeed, their actions were legal and their actions were in tandem with the will of the people.
President Tinubu has in the meantime transmitted to the Senate list of appointees for confirmation. Among them is a ministerial nominee, Dr. Bernard Mohammed. And from the Green Chambers, we hear the House of Representatives has expressed concern over the alleged use of harmful chemicals as preservatives for frozen foods and other edible commodities in Nigeria. Adopting a motion by Representative Chika Okafo, the House describes the trend as a major threat to public health and the well-being of millions of Nigerians. The House Committees on Nutrition and Food Security, NAFDAC, Healthcare Services, as well as Safety Standards and Regulations were given a 4-week deadline to investigate the public health concern and make recommendations.
Aware of recent reports and allegations on the use of dangerous chemicals such as formalin, sniper, kerosene, and other harmful preservatives in frozen foods and other consumable items. Worried that these chemicals are often used to extend the shelf life of food products, which can be harmful for consumption, cancerous, and damage organs. NAFDAC, the Standard Organization of Nigeria (SON), and the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, saddled with the responsibility of ensuring food safety, have been alleged to exhibit complicity and negligence.
Has expressed grief over the recent tanker explosion in Esa village in Niger State, which claimed many lives and left others injured, while calling for rehabilitation of the Bidda-Dikko Expressway to forestall road accidents.
and the Federal Road Maintenance Agency to immediately mobilize resources and contractors to commence full rehabilitation, expansion, and completion of the Bida Agay Lapailam Batediko Road, especially the sections between Bida and Agay. Mandate the Federal Road Safety Corps and relevant agencies to intensify enforcement of safety standards for tanker and heavy-duty operations, ensuring compliance with roadworthiness, loading procedures, and emergency response protocols.
The federal government has approved the disbursement of 32.9 billion naira across all implementing gateways under the Basic Health Care Provision Fund. This comes as the Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Ali Pati, unveiled and the revised Basic Health Care Provision Fund 2.0, designed to enhance coordination and improve health outcomes across the country. We'll bring you full details in subsequent bulletin. In the meantime, let's take a break. Thank you for staying tuned. As he opens his defense in the terrorism charge against him before the Federal High Court, Abuja, the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, has listed former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, SAN, as one of the defense witnesses. Kanu, as a defendant in a fresh motion he personally signed and filed on 21st October 2025 before Justice James Omotosho, assured the court of his readiness to open his defense as ordered by the court. During the defense, Nnamdi Kanu intends to call 23 witnesses divided into two categories of ordinary but material witnesses and vital and compellable witnesses. He prayed the court that, in view of the number of witnesses he intends to call, the court should consider granting a 90 days time frame to enable him conclude his defense. Meanwhile, a magistrate court in Abuja has ordered the remand of Kanu's counsel, Aloy Ejimako, and 12 others who were arrested during the protest organized by Omoyele Sowore on Monday against the IPOB leaders' continued trial and detention. And still from the judiciary, a Federal High Court in Abuja rejected a fresh application for bail filed by detained alleged terrorist negotiator Tukur Mohammed Mamu. Justice Mohammed Umar, in a ruling on the bail application on ill health made by Mamu, and held that the detaining authority, the Department of State Services, should continue to keep him, but if need be, take him to another health facility to cater for his health needs. Justice Umar noted that, going by the history of the case, the DSS has exhibited diligence in its handling of the case and has diligently prosecuted the case. The court held that one of the reasons for granting bail is where there is proof that the prosecution is not diligent. He noted that in Mamu's case, the DSS has been diligent, so the court has no reason to grant the application for bail. The judge thereafter ordered that Mamu's lawyer choose the health facility of choice to which the defendant should be promptly taken. He also asked the DSS to allow the defendant access to members of his family. The role of professionals in shaping policies and nurturing expertise critical to Nigeria's ecological balance and sustainable development has become more vital as the world continues to grapple with growing environmental challenges. Well, at a gathering of environmental practitioners in Nigeria, stakeholders did not only underscore the importance of professional responsibility, but also stress the need to uphold standards and lawful environmental practices across all sectors in the country. Charles Alpha reports.
The work of environmental practitioners as custodians of Nigeria's natural heritage cuts across crucial areas such as climate change mitigation, biodiversity conservation, waste management, water resources, and sustainable development. But with the infiltration of fake practitioners into the field, distinguishing genuine professionals and maintaining standards has become increasingly essential. The presentation of symbol of authority to council members therefore signifies a renewed commitment to upholding the ethics and standards of the profession.
It signals that environmental management in Nigeria is no longer a loose field, but a structured profession guided by competence.
This day marks a bold chapter in Nigerians' onward march towards responsibility, the sacred calling of stewardship over the land.
The Institute's commitment to professional excellence, ethical practice and capacity building strengthens the foundation on which resilient and equitable environmental management is built.
President of the Institute of Environmental Practitioners of Nigeria noted that with the environmental challenges confronting the nation, there is a growing need for concerted professional efforts in setting benchmarks and promoting best environmental practices across sectors.
Today, Nigeria faces environmental challenges, but as members of IPN, we are poised to contribute meaningfully to addressing these challenges through research, advocacy, policy engagement, and impactful intervention.
The maiden lecture series focused on the theme of environmental stewardship, inspiring critical thinking of issues shaping Nigeria's environmental future. Senate President Godswill Akpabio, represented, was conferred with the title of honorary patron, while new members were also welcomed into the fold. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
More than 15 West African countries have converged on Abuja, Nigeria, for the maiden West African International Conference on Climate Change and Just Energy Transition. The conference, organized by the West African Science Service Center on Climate Change and Adapted Land Use in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment, seeks to galvanize Africa's scientific and intellectual communities towards evidence-based climate actions and a just energy transition on the continent. Charles Alpha again reports.
The African continent, like many others across the world, faces the harsh and escalating impacts of climate change. With several African countries, African nations, including Nigeria, bearing the brunt, there is a growing demand for evidence-based solutions. That is the focus of this conference. It seeks to galvanize Africa's scientific and intellectual communities, working in synergy with political leadership and global partners towards developing practical, evidence-driven responses to climate crisis.
Our contribution to the science and knowledge of science on the subject of climate change is still not what it should be when we look at the other parts of the world. So we need to strengthen that.
2 weeks ago, President von der Leyen announced during the Global Gateway Forum in Brussels a 618 million euros Team Europe package to accelerate Africa's clean energy transition.
We must put effort together in terms of research, in terms of collaboration, with strong action. Is within this context that Wascal convened this conference.
Minister of Environment Balarabe Abbas Lawal, while declaring the conference open in Abuja, reaffirmed that Nigeria's commitment to a just energy transition is clear, deliberate, and rooted in the belief that no one should be left behind in the journey towards a low-carbon and climate-resilient future.
We must see science as part and parcel of trying to address climate change. We must educate people to understand climate change. We must do research in the area of climate change so that we can understand its dynamics, the way it's moving, and how we can confront it.
Outcomes of the Wascal Climate Conference are expected to translate into concrete national and regional policies that accelerate Nigeria's energy transition and sustainable low-carbon development. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
The Sultan of Sokoto and President General of the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, Muhammad Sa'ad Abubakar, has declared Thursday, 23rd October 2025, as the first day of Jum'at al-Ula, 1447 after Hijrah. The declaration was contained in a statement signed by Professor Sambu Weli Junaidu, Wazir in Sokoto, and Chairman of the Advisory Committee on Religious Affairs, Sultanate Council, Sokoto. The Sultanate Council Advisory Committee on Religious Affairs, in conjunction with the National Moon Sighting Committee, did not receive any report confirming the sighting of the new crescent of Jum'at al-Ula 1447 after Hijrah on the evening of Tuesday, 21st October 2025, equivalent to the 29th of Rabi'ul Asani 1447 after Hijrah. In other news, China has pledged its readiness to deepen relationship with Nigeria in the area of sports development in order to further bolster the already existing cordial friendship between the two nations. The director of the China Cultural Center in Abuja, Yang Jianxing, disclosed this at a media briefing ahead of the forthcoming second Chinese Ambassadors Cup Wushu Championship.
First of all, let's make a wonderful and successful event this time, and let us collectively, jointly make a good opportunity to share the beauty and the spirit and the integration and the friendship of our two countries' people.
We dream about what and it's coming into reality. The whole purpose of this is for youth engagement, cultural exchange between Nigeria and China, and it's starting on a big bang.
We will have a referee course where we'll educate the referees on the rules for this tournament. Because of the peculiarity of this tournament, we have to organize the rules in a particular manner that will be able to accommodate everybody.
The championship is built to hold from the 29th to 31st of October. And that concludes the news. Thank you for your time. I'm Ruth Aguwele. My sign language interpreter is John Daily.